happy to introduce our speaker for the day. She is Rachel Hiles. She is the founder and board president of Sandwich Family Caregivers of Kansas City. And Rachel is a 30-something aspiring local celebrity do-gooder. I mean, I'm sure you're intrigued already, and we are super honored to have her do good in our space today. Rachel is an alum of UMKC. She has a bachelor's degree in Espanol, which I am super excited about because I am also a Spanish speaker. She also has a Master of Public Administration with a focus on nonprofit management. She has been a caregiver for her grandmother and another older loved one who had developmental disabilities. And Rachel is going to tell us about the great work that they are doing at Sandwich KC, which she founded in 2018. So 5 years, Rachel. Wonderful. I know we're all looking forward to hearing about what you're doing. So with that, I will turn it over to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kelly, and thanks to the ADRC for inviting us and having us all today. It's a great honor. As you said, I'm Rachel. I'd like to introduce everybody to Naomi. She likes to participate in all the calls with me. And without further ado, I'll go to my slides here. So as Kelly said, I'm with, oh my gosh, Sandwich KC. And actually it's Sandwich Family Caregivers of Kansas City, but Sandwich KC for short. And yes, we launched 5 years ago. I'm Rachel. It's nice to meet you. You see me there with my, oh my gosh, she's trying to help me even. With my grandma. She did a lot with my mom to help take care of me when I was a little girl. And so it was my honor to take care of her. My grandma had Alzheimer's, and she aged in place successfully with my support and the support of our personal network. Until right before COVID, when we moved in together. And we spent the last 2 years together, and she passed away last January in 2022. And here we are. So I've been through the whole thing. So I get it a lot. What in the world is Sandwich KC? Well, we are a nonprofit here in the Kansas City Metro. Our mission is to provide opportunities for local family caregivers to find shared wisdom and local support. This quote may resound with you, or you may have heard it before. There are only four kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers. And chances are we're probably all going to fit in every single one of those categories. So why Sandwich? That's another question we get a lot. Back in my caregiving days with my grandma, the term sandwich generation was becoming quite popular. But in my own particular situation, I did not have children. I was caring for my grandma, but I was also trying to balance my life as a 29-year-old woman who had a career and various different things going for her. But I still felt sandwiched nonetheless. And I believe it's a feeling that anybody who's caring for a loved one can identify with. And so that's why we're called Sandwich. We provide information and referral, support groups, caregiver education, and self-care activities to anybody who's caring for a loved one in the Kansas City metro area. Anyone who identifies as a family caregiver is welcome to participate with us. We don't put any stipulation on the condition, the age, or whatever when it comes to their loved one. I'm just going to tell you a little bit more about our specific offerings, and then, of course, I guess you guys could ask questions if you like. So when we provide information and referral, all the people on our board are family caregivers of subtype. They've all had a wide variety of experiences, and one of us will respond when somebody contacts us, when a caregiver reaches out. They can reach out to us via our website. We also have the sandwich line, which I think is at the end of the presentation, but I'll tell you later what that number is. After a caregiver reaches out, we respond. We acknowledge their request and respond, because we know that so many times when we're looking for help, sometimes our requests fall on deaf ears, and there's nothing more frustrating than feeling like you're talking to a wall. After that, we set up a time and have a conversation. Not everybody always wants to have a conversation face to face or over the phone, like live one-on-one. We believe it's the best strategy for understanding each caregiver's unique situation, but we are happy to communicate with caregivers and whatever form of communication they prefer. Once we have more information about their situation, then we provide direct links and contact information to resources and programs potentially that could help, and also maybe articles and any other information that we think might be helpful. So that's a little bit about our information support. We also host support groups. This is kind of our flagship deal here. We've hosted our support groups virtually since 2018. Back in that time, not many people were even aware of Zoom. But the reason why we did that, again, is because, well, actually, I hadn't said that yet. The reason why we started hosting them virtually is because we found and feel that it's sometimes uncomfortable to meet in a room full of people that you don't know, sharing a lot of personal information. And if you're caring for a loved one, chances are you're probably kind of tired, and it's taxing to get ready, go across town, and deal with these emotions live with people that you may or may not know. So our support groups give people flexibility to meet with us on their own terms. They're hosted on the second Sunday of the month and the fourth Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. The information is on our website about how to connect. We currently do require registration, just so we have an idea of who's coming. So you can get the links there. We also, from time to time, offer training and workshops for family caregivers on various topics. We've partnered with AARP. Myself, I'm an AARP volunteer to offer Prepare to Care. We also like to help others understand how to put together a powerful care team to support their loved one. And also navigating supports that are available to older adults in our community. An example of this is our upcoming Heartland Caregiving Conference, which is on November 4th. It's a Saturday. It's a free event. We're very grateful to MARC, the Missouri Area Agency on Aging, and AARP Kansas City for sponsoring our event. We have a whole bunch of learning sessions from experts all over town. And we also have some great keynotes and other activities planned, as well as door prizes. And of course, the best thing is being able to join together with other family caregivers, because there's nothing like the feeling of knowing that you're not alone. And also, soon we hope to really focus efforts on offering self-care activities, whether they be in person or something that somebody could do, on their own terms, because we know that is such an important aspect of life when you're caring for a loved one. But we think our conference is going to be one mega self-care activity, and we're really looking forward to that. So, that's my spiel about Sandwich. That's me and my grandma there at her 83rd birthday party. It was kind of wild. But anyway, you can find us on social media at we're Sandwich KC on all three of the channels. Our website is Sandwich KC. And then you can see our email and our the sandwich line, which is 816-472-9178. You could call that or text that number if you're ever feeling like you have any questions or you just need somebody to talk to. We know how it is. So thanks for watching and thanks for inviting us to participate. And I'll hand it back over to Kelly.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for telling us about Sandwich KC. I am a big fan of asking for help, getting support, and of sandwiches. So you've really hit all the highlights today in your presentation. We have a question in the chat from Doretta Kidd, who wants to know what is the link to sign up for the conference. Can you say more about how people can sign up, Rachel?
Yes, so you can visit our website, sandwichkc.com. You could also go to Heartland Caregiving Conference. Oh, it's not on there. Heartlandcaregivingconference.com. And you could register there.
Perfect. Sounds great. I took a look, Rachel, and everyone at the list of activities and speakers, and it's going to be a great day. And there's some quite familiar names to me on your roster of speakers, including for those of you who were on our webinar on September 7th, Deborah Schaus and Ron Zoglin will be talking about some of their work with humor and caregiving. And I know that we really enjoyed having them on the webinar last month. So that's another enticement to see them again, as well as a lot of other folks talking about some really important topics related to caregiving, like making your home safe and legal issues and self-care. So I think you should certainly take advantage of participating in the conference as you are able to. Rachel, do you know, I know you're focused here in Kansas City. Could you talk a little bit about, like, what if someone's here in Kansas City and their loved one is in, I don't know, California? Can they still get some support from Sandwich KC?
Certainly. I'm going to stop my slides now.
Okay.
We have had a few long distance caregivers call and make contact with us and attend our support groups. Caregiving is not location based. And so we feel like any caregiver who needs support and they're in this area, we're going to help them out. Sometimes it's a little bit more challenging because you have to become familiar with the policies and programs in that other part of the country, but we feel like generally speaking all caregivers really need the same thing, which is information, emotional support, and then obviously access to high quality goods and services. And so we think even if somebody's loved one is not necessarily in the same place, their needs for information usually are pretty similar based on where they're at in their journey.
Great. So people from other places, if they come across your information, like lots of our folks that receive our My Alliance newsletter might not be in Kansas City, but I think would find your programs helpful. Could they still reach out and ask you questions?
Yeah, we'll do our best to help anybody who contacts us. Our support groups are only open to people in the metro though, because we're about local support and shared wisdom. And again, you know, there are lots of nuances when it comes to where you live and what's available. And so sometimes it can be a little tricky to navigate that.
Gotcha. Another question I have, and everybody else watching, please feel free to have questions, but I'll ask another question that I think lots of us would want to hear about. And Rachel, you mentioned, you know, having cared for your grandmother, and you told us that you are a 30-something good do-gooder. So Caregivers, of course, come in all flavors, all varieties. But you're pretty young to be a caregiver of a pretty special grandma, it sounds like. Can you talk from your perspective as a young person caring for a grandparent? What was that like? Anything in particular that stood out for you?
That's a great question. I think that uh most people don't expect, I mean, generally speaking, most people really don't ever expect to see caregiving in their future, even though it's pretty commonplace. I mean, up until not too long ago, we were all caring for our loved ones in the home, and I think it was an expectation of family culture. But for me, I, as an only child, and my grandma being an only child, and my mom, I mentioned that wasn't her mom. So, my mom was absolutely in no way necessarily obligated to help my grandma, although she did help my grandma because whenever she was helping my grandma, she was helping me.
Mhm.
Um, but my mom used to tell me, Rachel, you're gonna have to think about it one day, your grandma's gonna need your help. Because it was just us. So, um, my mom was kind of my personal fortune teller, and she was correct. Um, but for me, that's part of why I started Sandwich, is because don't get me wrong, in-person support groups are great. They're wonderful. We've hosted a few. We find them very valuable, but in this day and age, people are so busy. It's hard to get in a certain place at a certain time. And we're all on our phones or computers, so it's much easier to tap a button. And then you have, instant access to, human beings. And that was as we have more and more technology in our life, that was something that, you know, really made sense, I think, for us to host our meetings virtually. But as far as being a young person goes, I I don't know if I would necessarily like say that I identify with most young people, and maybe that's why it worked out for us. I am an only child, and so as a child growing up, I was always just with my grandma or with my mom, and so it's just kind of like, you know back to back to what we were doing before, only in a different way.
Yeah, the roles change a bit, don't they? They took care of you, and now it's your turn. It
Mm-hmm,
became your turn to return the favor. I can certainly relate, and I think several of us on the call can. Only children who might be thinking, well, gosh, what would caregiving look like for me with my family situation? And you're such a great example of rising to the occasion, Rachel, I think, and providing care not only for your grandmother, but also your other relative. Is that
Oh
right?
yeah, that was Calvin. That was a very unique story. Calvin was about my mom's age. I'd always like to point that out because I was a lot younger, and for some reason I had always convinced myself that Calvin was just going to be around with me until I got old. Even though he was, born in 1965, and so I had the honor of serving as his guardian, his legal guardian, after I took care of him professionally years ago back in undergrad. Um, and the thing is, I was actually, in that role helping Calvin before I started taking care of my grandma. And
Mhm.
so once I started taking care of my grandma, then I had to balance both of those co-occurring, caregiving situations, basically. Up until about, even though Calvin had a Medicaid waiver which covered his in-home supports, but up until about halfway through my caregiving mission, Calvin got discharged from the hospital on hospice. And I like to tell this story because I think it illustrates very well the very difficult decisions that people have to make when they're in a caregiving role. But I think we established I had a career. It was a really good career. It was a job that I loved, and I never really, had any plans necessarily to leave that job. But when Calvin went home on hospice, I had no idea really what that meant. Um, and when I looked it up, I was like, yeah, right. Calvin's not ready for hospice. Oh, this agency's just not taking care of him right. Because, we all believe that nobody can care for our loved ones the way we can. And yes, that may be true. But sometimes we put ourselves in very tough positions because we live with that philosophy. And well, taking a look at all the things on my plate. I had grandma and I had Calvin, and I had this job. That was the easiest thing at the time for me to take off my plate. And so I quit my job to go take care of Calvin. And unfortunately, Calvin was ready to go. It took about a month and a half. In between that month and a half, I was, of course, scrambly because his residential provider, when they heard the words hospice, they kind of freaked out too, and they left us all to ourselves, just the two of us. And of course, Calvin not having any family, I had two choices. The two choices were to put him in a skilled nursing facility or a hospice place, or taking him home. And I decided to choose the latter. Calvin had been living in his home for 20 years, and as a deaf, blind adult, that was the only home he ever known. And so I took him home. I scrambled to find all the support I could. I pretty much used all of his last little dollars that he had, to pay people to come in so I could go still check on my grandma. Well, my grandma, bless her heart, she was as I mentioned, she had Alzheimer's. She was still on her own at that point. She ate some bad food that got left out. And guess what? She had to go to the hospital. So she was at the hospital for almost a week. In between that time, the Calvin came home, and Calvin passed away. And when I came back from that week, Calvin, was no longer getting out of bed. He was not eating anymore. And so it was a very wild journey, but it's kind of a good deal that I ended up leaving my job, because after that first experience with death, and caring for somebody at the end of life, there's probably no way I could have went back to work in a normal capacity. So that's like the full story, but not the full story. So anyway.
Well, goodness, yes, Rachel, you've certainly illustrated why you've called your organization Sandwich. It sounds like you had a lot of stuff on all sides. And caregiving is a role that many of us would never have selected, and can become quite an honor to care for those who first cared for us. And I know that I'm really grateful for the work that you've done to support your family and also to share with other folks in that same situation. I want to point out a really insightful comment that Renee has put in the chat. And Rachel, looks like Rachel just responded to it, but for everyone's benefit, virtual support groups also mean that you don't have to make arrangements for care for your loved one. And that is so important. That is so often the barrier for why people can't get help, because they can't leave home. And none of us ever would have wished a pandemic on the world. But one really great thing that emerged from that is that we started finding ways to make support more accessible to more people, including things like caregiver support groups and weekly webinars and all kinds of wonderful things where people can access information. So yes, I love, Rachel, your focus at Sandwich KC on local support, local resources for people. But I also hope that anybody that might not be within reach of Kansas City will feel motivated to look for something in their own area and to take advantage of support groups that are accessible either in person or online. And you can certainly do that. You can find some virtual and in-person support groups that the ADRC offers. There's a little plug for our group, so we'd be happy to have you. And so I'm so glad you shared that information, Rachel. We've got just a couple of more minutes in case anybody has any more questions or thoughts. I will reiterate that the heartlandcaregivingconference.com, Rachel, is that correct?
Yes,
Is the website.
that's correct. We'll
Okay.
be accepting registration up to October 31st.
Okay.
So make your arrangements and mark your calendars now because we really, really want to see you. It's going to be a great, wonderful event.
It absolutely looks like it. And I see that there's going to be lunch and swag bags and door prizes. And gosh, caregivers deserve all of that and more. So thank you so
Mm-hmm.
much for putting it on. Thank you for making us aware of it, Rachel. And that is on Saturday, November 4th, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And the location is?
It's going to be at Founders Hall, which is at Grace and Holy Trinity downtown, which is just a beautiful space. And there's off-street parking, so you don't have to worry about where in the world you're going to park downtown. It's just right there. And it's a wonderful, beautiful space.
Yeah.
And yes, as you mentioned, we have lots of awesome, amazing things that we'll be giving away and drawing for at our event.
Sounds wonderful. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I will officially thank you again, Rachel, for being with us today and sharing all of your information. I hope everybody will check out sandwichkc.com and the Heartland Caregiving Conference website. I put our slide for my alliance and the ADRC up on the screen, and you can see there are several ways to connect with us in terms of participating in research, learning more about My Alliance, and making donations to support the work that we are doing to support you. Next week's webinar, our speaker will be Karen Knappenberger. She is a licensed specialist in clinical social work for the Veterans Administration. And so she's a wealth of information about brain health and veterans resources and all kinds of good things. And she is also a drama therapist, which is a lot of fun. And she's going to talk with us about some activities that you can do with your loved one to stimulate and cultivate their creative side, their artistic side, some meaningful activities for both you and the person with experiencing a cognitive change. So I think we are, as we were today, in for quite a treat with Karen next Thursday, October 12th. So we hope you'll join us. We'll have more information on our website and in My Alliance about that. Until then, everybody have a wonderful week. If you have questions, feel free to contact us at myalliance@kumc.edu. And Rachel, thank you very much again.
It's my pleasure. If you guys are looking for a giggle today, you could go on YouTube and type in "taking care of Grandma Rap."
Okay, that sounds fun. I will definitely check it out myself. I'm always looking for a good reason to laugh.
Yeah.
So thanks again. And Rachel, I hope you see in the chat, Renee says thank you. So with that, have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.